Welcome to Pause and Practice Excel 8-3. In this project, we're using Get Pivot Data in a pivot table and working with an analysis tool pack. Right? So we're going to be using queries to clean data model and building two queries as sources for a pivot table with a timeline and another workbook. So, there will be some additional files we'll be using for this Pause and Practice. So, in this first one here, we're going to be using our combined sales worksheet. And we're going to use Get Pivot Data to display results from a pivot table. So before we start, we're going to select cell I5 here. We're going to press equals to start the formula. We want to click the Pivot Table Sheet tab and select cell B4 for apparel. And then we'll press Enter. And so then we'll do the same thing for I6 here. And then we'll use Get Pivot Data to display the total for the gift department. Equals Pivot Data Gifts. And then equals Pivot Data for Health Aids. And you'll notice up here it says Get Pivot Data because we're referencing a pivot table in a specific cell within the pivot table, which they're getting from sold, in the department, and then apparel. Now, going back to our pivot table sheet tab, we're going to select the cell in our pivot table here. So now we're going to pivot our pivot table. So within our pivot table, clicking within the pivot table anywhere, we see our pivot table fields here. What we want to do is we want to move our department from our rows to our columns. And you'll see immediately that our pivot table has pivoted. And so now we see our department as a column. Now, what we're going to do from here, we're going to go back to our combined sales, and you'll notice that it still shows the same data even though we adjusted or pivoted our pivot table. So now we're going to format our pivot table here. Now, clicking our pivot table worksheet, we're going to click a cell in the pivot table, and we will click the More button. The More button is up here under Pivot Table Tools, Design tab, and then under the Styles here, this is the little button here for More, and we use select Pivot Style Medium 8. So this is medium, and I believe this is medium. Oh, this is medium 8. Now we'll come down here to our grand totals. So, design tool, our grand totals up here. And we want to select on for columns only. So let's remove this whole rows grand total off of here. Now we're going to select the Analysis Tool Pack. And again, going up here to Options, right, clicking in Add-ins, and you can see the Analysis Tool Pack. So clicking on Analysis Tool Pack in the Inactive List, Go, and then we can click on Analysis Tool Pack and press OK. And so now it added our Dallas Analysis Toolback under the Data tab as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to calculate descriptive statistics for a data range. Going back to our Product 101 Worksheet tab, we're going to select the Data Analysis button here. We want descriptive statistics. So these are a lot of different statistical analyses that this data pack can do, from t-tests to histograms. We just want statistics. So we're going to press descriptive statistics. I'm pressing OK. We want an input range of B4 through B28 of how many were sold each month. Okay, we want to verify that the columns is selected here. Right? We're also saying that there are labels in our first row because we started with B4, which is the item sold. And we want to select output range. Right? We want this to be outputted right near E4. And we want summary statistics. And we want the kth largest box. We're going to say the third largest. Right? So we want to calculate the third largest value in the range. Pressing OK. And here we get some statistics for this. An auto-fitting column E, just so we can see the full analysis. So the mean is 10.66, the standard error is 0.94, the deviation is 4.63. You're looking at kurtosis and skewness and range. So the total range numbers ranges 20. So it looks like it goes from 4 to 24. That's the range. The minimum is 4, the maximum is 24. Right, 24 total numbers. And then the third largest is 15. So now let's calculate a moving average for a data range. Going back to our data analysis, we're going to come down here to a moving average. We're going to select cells B5 to B28. Notice this time we are not selecting the label. Right? So we're not selecting the label in the first row box. We're going to say an interval of 3. Right, to average groups of 3 cells in a range. We're going to put an output range of E21 here. And then we're going to press Chart Output and OK. And so we're going to move this right up here next to it for the chart. And then we're going to size out the chart to make it a little bit bigger. And there we go. So that's the moving average of the chart. And so you'll see this is what we would forecast to happen, and this is what actually happens. So it's a little bit higher highs and lower lows, but it's keeping with the trend that's been projected here. So what we can do now is we can get and transform data from an XML file. So we're going to open a new workbook. Okay, and now we're going back to our data. We want get and transform data, and we want the new, right? We want to choose from file, from XML. And we will navigate to the SPA Sales 08 XML file. And this is what pops up. So this is the Power Query Editor. And this is listing out all the data that's within the table. So we're going to expand the data first. Right here is the Expand button. We're going to select all fields and then press OK. And here you can see these are all the accounts. So the product ID and the number sold. Now we're going to click the date function here. So we're going to adjust the date here. So you can go over here to Home, Transform, Data Type, and we're going to choose Date/time. You can also use it from the Transform data type here as well. Now we're going to come over here to the product ID, and we're going to choose Data Type, Whole Number, Table Spaces, Sold, also as a whole number. Clicking over here to the HTTP. Okay, and we want to remove column. So coming over here to Manage Column, remove column, remove column, and then we can also remove the attributed generated column. So we're left with just our 3 columns here with our data in it. So now we can click the Close and Load button. And so we close the query, and we've loaded the data into the workbook. So now we can get and transform data from an Access database file. So we can click on New Query button from the database. And then this time we can say, again, we'll be choosing from a database, and we'll be choosing a Microsoft Access database. We're using the database 08, the ACCDB extension, so from here we have the database 08 folder, and we will select the table of spa products in this Navigate window. You can see these are the products we have here. And we're going to select Edit at the bottom of the window. And so here we can edit this with a query editor first. For the product number here, we're going to say it's the whole number. Okay, which it is. So we have the department, description, and then the unit price. I'll press the Click and Close and Load button. You'll see it's getting the information, and it's pulling that into a sheet as well. And so we can rename this as the database query. And now we can rename this so we can recreate a pivot table based on these 2 queries. So by selecting cell A2 here in our database query, we can click the Summarize with Pivot Table button. Okay, so under Table Tools, Design, we have a Tools group. We can say Summarize with Pivot Table. We're going to select the existing worksheet. Okay, and the location we will select is cell A3 down here on sheet 1. Okay, we're going to add this data to the data model box, and then we'll select OK. Now, we want to choose department and description in the fields. Coming up here to all, we're going to select Spa Sales 08 to expand the field list. We're going to select the Table of Spa Sales .sold box. We're going to select Auto Detect. Okay, and it's automatically detecting and creating relationships within the workbook. We're going to close this message box. So we're going to rename this sheet as Timeline. So we're going to insert a timeline for this pivot table. Right? And so we're going to click the Insert Timeline button. So that can be found under Pivot Table Tools. We want the Analyze tab. We want the Filter Group, Insert Timeline. We want the Table Spa Sales date to be included in this timeline. We're going to press OK. And we want, instead of months, we're going to select quarters. So this is how it's listed out by quarter. We're going to come down here to select Q3 in the timeline for 2017. Okay. Move to options. Right, we'll come up here and the timeline styles. And we'll say it's going to be dark number 5. And so now this is showing you that in Q3, these were the products sold. If we want to expand it, say all of Q1, 2, 3, and 4, these were the products sold. Only in Q1, no products sold. Q2, Q3, and so on. At this time, you can save your worksheet, and that's the end of the pause and practice.